Hello everyone, this is Grace. It is September the 27th, 2023, and we are continuing our study on wine. And this video is part 2 of our review of the portion of the Bible known as the parable of the fabric and the wineskin. So we left off in verse 16. And we had what we reviewed before in the previous video is that we established that it was John's two disciples, Andrew and Philip, who were asking Jesus this question. And they were asking him not about a parable, but about a law. And when Jesus upheld it and said, "And then shall they fast," once he leaves, he was upholding a law, not a tradition. Okay, so let's continue on. "No man putteth a piece of new cloth upon an old garment, for that which is put in to fill it up taketh from the garment, and the rent is made worse." Okay, so I've done this before when I was younger. I had a pair of pants, I tried to patch them up. I did, they were older pants, I put a new patch on it, and what happened is that it ripped across the top, and you could see the threads pulled from the older fabric. What happened was when you washed it, and I think it was the very first time that I washed it, the patch shrunk, and it ripped across the top. Well, it was just a small rip before. It ripped all the way across the top, and then it went at the top, and then one side ripped as well. It pulled the fabric apart, and there was like threads that were hanging that were clinging to the new patch from the old cloth, but there was a tear across and down the side now in order to accommodate for the patch having shrunk. It doesn't work. It ruined the pants basically. Well, it was just a little tear before. It now became the size of the patch, and it's just ruined. So if I would have known then. But anyway, this applies to we're going to keep it in context, but you can kind of tell that they're talking about the law here. When they're talking about the law here, they're speaking of the law of the firstborn, or what they understood to be the firstborn that needed to fast, but it wasn't just a firstborn. And that's why John taught differently. And that's why Jesus upheld what John taught. "No man puts a new cloth unto an old garment." There was a flaw with the law, is what he's saying. "For that which is put in to fill it up taketh from the old garment." There was a flaw which required a patch. But the patch could not go over that old law. It would just destroy it. It would mess it up. The old law had to be, they just had to cease the old law until after the new could be brought in. That patch doesn't work. On that new patch, which was brought in, Jesus coming down and dying, it does not work within the confines of the old law. That's what's trying to be said here. The new cloth on the old garment doesn't work. Jesus coming and dying for us does not work with the old law. The two are incompatible. All it will do is destroy it. And you don't want to destroy the law. We need that law. That law is teaching us right from wrong. It has to be there for us. Okay? But they don't work together. So what are you going to do? Well, the next verse is going to tell us. "Neither do men put new wine into old bottles, else the bottles break, and the wine runneth out, and the bottles perish. But they put new wine into new bottles, and both are preserved." So, of course, we're still talking about the law. The same law that required them to fast and will require them to fast at a later time, according to Jesus. However, you have this new variable in here. That's the new wine. Now, he used this. Let me just tell you, just in case you're not familiar with the understanding here. This bottles is really wineskins. That's what it interprets to. And when you would place the grape juice in the bottles, it would begin to ferment. And as it fermented, the CO2 would release gas, and it would stretch out the new wineskins, and that would be fine. But when the wineskins were older, then they would dry up and they would not be able to stretch anymore. So if you went and put another batch of wine in there, a new batch of wine in an old wineskin, then it would try to stretch and it would just break because it was no longer stretchy. It was just too old, right? So you would put a new wine in a new wineskin that still had the ability to stretch. And then it would just stretch to accommodate the room for the CO2 gases that were released. And you would still be able to maintain both your wine and the bottle. So you have a new wine. You have Jesus coming. You cannot put him within the old law. It doesn't work. However, if you put him within the new law, then both the law and the new wine are preserved. The new bottles, it says both are preserved. The new bottles are preserved, the old bottles are preserved, and the wine is preserved. Nothing goes away. Let me explain. Back in the old days, you used to see, even today, you'll see signs that say, no shirt, no shoes, no service. Old days, you would never see anything like that. You would see something like, no colors, no colored. Why would you see that? Well, we live side by side. The same things you do, we do. If you had a store and people of no color would go into that store, it would be assumed that people of color would try to come to the store too. So you put no color. But if everyone was people of no color, if everyone was white, then there would be no need for that sign. So, but today, back in the day, everyone wore suits. Men would wear hats. They would wear their suit jacket. They would not run around without a shirt. They would not run around without shoes. You would not see a no shoes, no shirt, no service sign. It was not needed. As times grew, fashions changed. Then people started coming in with no shoes. People started coming in with no shirt, and they would expect to receive service. So the sign goes up. No shoes, no shirt, no service. We are living under, so we have the law. The law is to teach us how to live without the law. Because once we get to the point where we love one another, where we become our brother's keeper, where we want to see the best happen for those around us, then nobody has to tell you don't steal from your brother. This is what's being said. The law is still maintained. The old bottles are still there, because otherwise, how are you going to learn how to be good? How are you going to learn how to be righteous without the law? Who's going to teach you? A man? Is a man going to teach you what's right and what's wrong? Or is God going to teach you? Or you could just eat the apple and figure out for yourself. We have a teacher. We have a God who has sent us down the law so that we can know how to be righteous. That's the old bottles. Once we get to the point where we love one another, we have no more need for the law. We're never going to walk into a store without shirt and shoes. We're never going to steal from our brother because we love him. We're never going to do him wrong because we are our brother's keeper. We make ourselves responsible for him and his happiness. So we don't need that law because no one's ever going to do it. But we're not there yet. So the old law is still there to teach us. It doesn't apply to us because the Lord is working in our hearts with the Holy Spirit in order to bring us to that point. But it's still there. Because if you're not a sinner, why do you need Jesus? If you're not breaking those laws, if you're already doing all of these things, then why do you need Jesus? This is what is meant by confess your sins. You have to first confess you're a sinner in order to acknowledge that you need help. And if you don't have the law there, then you become your own law within yourself. And you just believe everything that you do is right. Or there's a law. There is a law that's been established, and if you don't follow that law, then you can confess, I'm a sinner. I need help to get from point A to point B. It doesn't change the law. The law still stands. It has to stand in order for you to break it. It doesn't make any sense for it to be gone. That makes no sense to me anyway. It just doesn't make any sense. The law still stands. We still have to follow the law now until we get to the point where we do it naturally, out of love. That's what's being said here. The old law, the new wine does not fit with the old law because you're never going to do that once you make it here. You're never going to. You are your brother's keeper. If you try and put that in the old law, it doesn't work. It just doesn't work. The two don't work together. Why would you have a no shoes, no shirt, no service sign up when everybody is walking in with hats and suit jackets? It becomes insulting and weird. And it doesn't work. What's the point? You have a fruitless law. It doesn't work. It just doesn't work. But if you put the new law in new bottles within the new confinement, both become preserved. The one is to teach you and lead you to the other. That's what's being said here. Okay, I hope I made that clear. Let's look at the other versions. So a question about fasting. So let's look here. This is where I believe he had the party. So we'll read through this real quick. And he went forth again by the sea side, and all the multitude resorted unto him, and he taught them. And as he passed, he saw Levi, the son of Alphaeus, sitting at the receipt of custom, and said unto him, Follow me. And he arose and followed him. And it came to pass that as Jesus sat at meat in his house, many publicans and sinners sat also together with Jesus. No, this one just says at his house. At his house, it's not really clear. And I don't think we need anything out of this part either. We'll read the last two verses here. No man also seweth a piece of new cloth on an old garment, else the new piece that is filled up taketh away from the old, and the rent is made worse. And no man putteth new wine into old bottles, else the new wine doth burst the bottles, and the wine is spilled, and the bottles will be marred. But new wine must be put into new bottles. Now there is a little bit of a difference in Luke. Oh, I forgot to see. I'm not going to go see. But this must be the one where he made the follow for the party for Jesus, the feast for Jesus. So let's read through this first. And after these things he went forth and saw a publican named Levi sitting at the receipt of custom. And he said unto him, Follow me. And he left all, rose up and followed him. And Levi made him a great feast in his own house. And there was a great company of publicans and others that sat down with him. Do you see what I'm saying? If Levi, who was a publican, made a feast, why were the Pharisees there complaining about Jesus eating with publicans. It doesn't make sense. Okay? So we'll read through all of this because there's a little bit of a change. And they said unto him, why do the disciples of John fast often and make prayers, and likewise the disciples of the Pharisees, but thine eat and drink? Again, it only specifies the disciples because this is supposed to be the exception. Everyone knows that the Pharisees, the firstborn anyway, of the Pharisees is going to fast. That's the way this question is phrased. You can read between the lines and see that that is done. John would not make his disciples fast if he wasn't already fasting. And he said unto them, can ye make the children of the bridegroom fast while the bridegroom is with them? Again, the word is make. This is a law. Or not ask or have or teach them or anything like that. No, a law is done. It's supposed to be done. But the days will come when the bridegroom, law is an order. It's an order from the Father. But the days will come when the bridegroom shall be taken away from them, and then shall they fast in those days. And he spake also a parable unto them. No man putteth a piece of a new garment upon an old. If otherwise, then both the new garment maketh a rent, and the piece that was taken out of the new agreeth not with the old. I don't know why I highlighted that in green, but it is what it is, I guess. I'm a little bit too bright, so let me just change it. And the piece that was taken out of the new garment agreeth not with the old, because it becomes pointless. It's fruitless. It just makes no sense. It just doesn't agree with the old because there's no rule for it, because nobody ever does it. Okay? And no man putteth new wine into old bottles, else the new wine will burst the bottles and be spilled, and the bottles shall perish. But new wine must be put into new bottles, and both are preserved. No man also having drunk old wine straightway desireth new, for he saith, the old is better. This word better does not mean better, and it's been a long time since I looked it up, but let's look it up and refresh my memory here. Fit for use, useful, virtuous, good. It does not mean better. This is saying that, I'll give you an example. Your mom used to cook you your favorite dish every Friday. And every Friday, she would go out to the garden and pull up the tomatoes. Let's just say spaghetti. She would pull up the tomatoes out of the garden, and she would make that up fresh, and she'd put them in there. And you know what? Let's just say she got everything out of a box. Let's say she'd open up a can of tomato sauce, and she fixed the spaghetti, and she would, and you were eating out of a box every day. I mean, every Friday. But it was your favorite meal, and you loved it. So you grow up, you get money, and you go to a fancy, smancy restaurant, right? And they're renowned for their spaghetti. And you go there, and you taste the spaghetti, and you be like, no, my mom made the best spaghetti ever. This doesn't hold a candle to my mama's spaghetti. No, you're wrong. You're wrong. You have developed a taste for what was given to you on a regular basis. so you think it's better, but as your taste buds develop and grow more refined, then eventually you come to the understanding that it was just the habit of eating that spaghetti that made you think it was good. It was spaghetti from a box. It wasn't better. It was just that you grew used to it. That's what's being said here. No man also having drunk of old wine straightway, right away, desireth new. No, they're familiar with the old. Why do we have to change things? We'll go back to the old ways. What is with this? You know, no. We're creatures of habit. For he said the old wine is better. No, the old ways are better. No, they're not. They're not. We're just creatures of habit. Eventually, you will begin to see that the new is better, if it is better, but not at first. That's all that's being said here. So we're at 20 minutes now. Let me look through the scriptures real quick and see if I missed anything. You know what? Let me just shoot through them real quick. We'll just go through. That's a mistake. I don't know why that's in there. Oh, I put this in here because of the traditions. If Jesus is going through fighting against the traditions, how is he going to uphold a tradition? A difficult tradition at that. A meaningless tradition. A double-minded man is unstable in all his ways. Draw nigh to God, and he will draw nigh to you. Cleanse your hands, you sinner, and purify your hearts, you double-minded. Okay, I guess those were all of the scriptures that I had. Jesus was not upholding a tradition. They had to teach that because they didn't understand that there was a second fast. And they knew that the timing was incorrect for the timing of the 7th month fast, the Day of Atonement. So I understand that. They took everything out of order because they had to establish some sort of connection between the disciples knowing. Well, they didn't really have to do that. They could have told you that the disciples, Andrew and Philip, but for some reason they felt the need to hide that. So I'm not really sure why, but it is what it is. But that's why they connected it with this scripture. Matthew also was not this far in when he I actually have something to show you that they changed things around real quick before we close out. I was going to try and draw a timeline myself, but it was way too much work. I knew I wasn't going to be able to do it, so I just started putting this together. So in Matthew, the question that he was questioned about the fasting, verse 9-14. Then he sent the disciples out. He sent them out on their own. Next, then he was rejected in Nazareth by his own people. That came next, and then he fed the 5,000. In Mark, he was questioned first. That matches Matthew, but then afterwards he was rejected by his own people. Then he sent the disciples out, and then he fed the 5,000. And Luke, he was rejected by his own people in Nazareth first. Then he was questioned about the fast. Then he sent the disciples out, and then he fed the 5,000. The only thing that's consistent in these stories is that he fed the 5,000 after he did these three things. Nothing else matches up across the board. They move these stories around. I think I'm going to close out with that. Yeah, I can't think of anything else I need to say. Anything else I need to say. So I will talk with you in the next video.